Hi and welcome to the Beer Temple. Just me yet again. Been going solo for a little while here, but don't worry, we'll get Margaret back. But that's fine. It's going to be a fun show today. We're going to be talking about Schwarzbier, or German black lagers. The reason I wanted to talk about this show is because I've been doing a lot of kind of summery lagers, because, you know, this is kind of lager season, some people would believe, and I kind of think that it's a nice, crisp, refreshing drink on a warm summer day or evening. And this beer, I think, fits right into that category, although you probably don't think of it, or maybe not your first thought in terms of beer styles for a warm day. This, like I said, is a German style. It is called Schwarzbier, and that literally means black beer. Schwarz means black. And it is originally from the area of southern Germany known as Bavaria. But now I think the biggest brewery is this one right here. This is Kostritzer, and that's right around central Germany. It might be in Bavaria. I'm not quite sure. I don't know my German geography. Russ, I bet you do, so you can let me know if that's accurate or not. So I've got, I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the beer, not too much, and then get right into it because we have a bunch of beers to drink. Only one of which, oddly enough, is German. So I'll crack the Kostritzer first because I figured to start with the you know, kind of the standard bearer of the style. This is definitely the most well-known German Schwarzbier in the world. There is another called Monschaft that I had the Keller beer from in an earlier episode. They also make a very nice Schwarzbier, but I could not get it easily for this show. But I think we're doing just fine. And anyway, this is really the most common and the most thought of Schwarzbier when people you know, reach for one. They reach for a Kostritzer often. So it's called black beer, and you can see why. I'll pour a little bit more than I normally would. You know, it's a very, very dark beer. I mean, really, it's kind of a ruby or incredibly dark beer. Think of like Guinness. Guinness isn't really black. It's like a ruby red, but it quickly has the appearance of being black when it's in a glass. And this is very much the same color, maybe a little bit more brown than red, but quite dark. Good amount of carbonation, a nice tan carbonation. And this beer is really a kind of deceiving beer here, because while it is very, very dark in appearance, it is not very dark on the palate, and that's why I thought it might be good to review on a nice summer day like today. It is medium bodied, but it's fairly dry, not very bitter, and it's pretty smooth beer in general. It's very drinkable, and in fact sometimes it's called Schwarz Pils or black pills, to give you an idea of kind of what sort of flavors you're going for. It's related to the Dunkel, which I've had a show on in the past. You might want to check that out. It kept a little bit darker with hints of roast and a little less sweetness. So if you guys are familiar with the German dark lager Dunkel, you know, similar to that, but even lighter bodied, even though it is darker in appearance. So let's dive in, and I'll talk a little bit about the beer as I'm smelling this particular version of it. So this beer has a best by date of February 20th, 2030. We're now in about early mid-July here, so my guess is they probably have a year on this, so we're looking at you know, 4 or 5 months old, something like that for this beer. So not incredibly fresh, but not too old either, especially for a beer like this where hops aren't really playing a major role. So I'm getting a nice mild malt flavor, a little bit of roast, a little bit of kind of that bread crust, but it's not a big bold porter by any means, even though it looks like it. This is a much more mild lager, and I'm not getting a lot of hop character either, or any fruity esters. This is clean. This is a lager again. You're not going to get that yeast coming through in here, and it's very, very nice. Clean, dark chocolate without being bitter, rich, almost caramel malts to it, bread crust, and really just kind of a lovely smelling beer. And again, I mean, even now, I mean, you drink this beer, buddy, come on in. There you go. It's quite light. It's quite lovely on a day like this. It's got a fairly light to medium light mouthfeel to it, a little bit of softness to it, a little bit of chew to the mouth. Finishes very, very very smooth. I'd say it's leaning a little bit towards malt, so it ends a hint sweet, but mostly dry. Absolutely no bitterness at all. In fact, they're trying to get all these rich malt colors without getting any bitterness from it as well. You know, so like when you get in a stout or a porter, you get that kind of acrid roast edge to it. Not at all here. You don't want any kind of bitterness coming from the grain here. Certainly chocolate, almost like a bit of like a caramel chocolate, and like a husky, kind of like cocoa grain of some kind, almost like a chocolate Cocoa Puffs. That's what it tastes like, or Cocoa Rice Krispies, something like that, where you're getting that cocoa-y, milky flavor. Certainly not as sweet as those, but it really is nice, and the dryness allows it to be drinkable as well. This is a good beer. It is showing a little bit of its age, or a little bit of maybe abuse, so it's not at its peak, but I am liking this beer quite a bit. I'm going to go 89 with the Kostritzer. Just a really nice drinking beer, and it is widely available. So if you guys see it, pick one up, even if it is a nice hot day, and see how it goes. All right. So next we have our first beer ever, I think, from Sprecher. This is a brewery up in Wisconsin who might be best known for their root beer, which has a cult following and is quite delicious. They brew sodas as well as beers, and this is the Schwarzbier. They focus very much on German style beers. They do some ales, but a lot of lagers as well. And this is their Black Bavarian. Comes in a chunky 16-ounce bottle. It's a little bit higher in alcohol than the typical Schwarzbier. Usually you're going to get 4.5 to 5.5%. This is up around 6%, so a little bit bigger. And this is one of the staple year-rounds of Sprechers. It's been around for a long time. A lot of old-timers look for this beer. You know, when in the days of the beer drought, this was a beer you could get. They've been making it since the mid-'80s, believe it or not. So let's take a look here. Very, very similar color to the Kostritzer. Maybe a little bit darker even, and without some of that kind of russet color. Just a really dark brown and good looking head. It looks to be a little bit fuller in the body too. We'll see if that comes through with a little bit of sweetness. You know, when I talk about mouthfeel, a lot of times that mouthfeel is residual sugars. You don't taste them necessarily as sweet, but just as a full flavor. And much more coffee in this one. It's just on the edge of starting to have some pretty pronounced roast character to it, and the roast is fine, but you don't want to have that bitterness associated with roast. So yeah, I'm getting coffee. I'm good. Yeah, it's basically like a roasted grain toast roast. Some dark milk chocolate as well, not quite to that bittersweet. This beer is also from, well, it looks right around the same time as the Kostritzer, so we're looking at like 5 months about for this beer. Somebody's calling me. You'll have to wait. This is a nice beer. It is much more full-bodied than the Kostritzer. It doesn't have that really nice, light, highly drinkable character to it. Just a little more full. A little chewier, a lot bigger, bolder flavors as well. While I don't have any hop bitterness, which is what I want to not have, I am getting touches of kind of a bitter roast to it, which is delicious in this beer, but it's not entirely to style. Now, I'm not really going to judge this to BJCP specifications. I'm just going to go with what I like. And this is a very nice beer. Not getting any sort of fruity esters from the yeast at all. This is all just the malt coming through, that kind of sweet candied caramel, as well as that chocolate and coffee from the roast. So as they're literally roasting these grains, you know, they're burning them, they're charring them, they're getting this roast in there, and that's what it's from. It also has that interesting, almost like earthiness, or maybe orange, like dark chocolate orange, if you ever had that, like the dark chocolate with the orange flavor. That's what I'm getting a little bit here. In fact, that would be an awesome pairing. Those like that orange flavored dark chocolate with this would go really nice. I like this beer a little bit more than the Kostritzer, although it isn't to style necessarily. I'm gonna go 90 with this beer. Definitely good. Available in 4-packs. Not sure about the distribution here for Sprecher, but if you see it, pick up the Black Bavarian. I really like this beer. Pretty impressed with it. Haven't had it in a while, so there you are. Really, really nice. Give myself a rinse. That was a pretty big beer. Yeah, I mean, for you porter and stout lovers here, this might be the beer for you. For the guys who want something nice and quaffable on a warm day or a fall day even, this is kind of where I would go. So, moving right along. Next we have the Uinta Baba. This is the second time we've had Uinta on the show. The first time was for their Doobie Black IPA, which I remember liking quite a bit. So this is the second time I'm having a dark beer. That was an ale. This is a lager. This is their Baba Black Lager. And in my research for the show, I realized or found out that Schwarzbier is a bit of a specialty in Utah due to the local liquor laws. They, for a while, had alcohol levels capped at 4%. So, as I said before, you know, 4%, that's right in the wheelhouse of the Schwarzbier. So, you know, while these beers are very dark and have you know, a striking appearance, they're quite light and drinkable, and I think you know, that lent some appeal to people in America who were trying to come up with some new styles of beer that might seem interesting and fun to people. And if you're certainly working with an alcohol limit, then you're going to want to go for beers that are lower in alcohol as well, and the Schwarzbier falls right in there. So I thought that's kind of cool. You know, throughout history, you've found that styles are really the result, more often than not, of politics. If you really go back and look at why things started to happen, more times than not, including the famed Reinheitsgebot, the German purity law, it all comes down to politics and being able to tax people. And it's cool that in America we're seeing the same, I guess, the same thing here. So this is the Uinta Baba. It is organic. I believe all their beers are organic. Don't quote me on that. And a lot more carbonation here. I don't have the let me see if I can get the if I can find any labeling, bottling information. Oh, here we go. Oh, so 515. So this beer is less than 2 months old, so by far the freshest that we've tasted so far. And I had a big fluffy head. Really, the bubbles were much bigger than on the 4-1s, like big kind of sudsy bubbles. Dissipated a little bit, and again, I think we're just getting darker and darker here. This beer is quite dark. You know what? It might be the same as the Sprechers, but it has a lighter body to it. I can just tell by swirling it that it's a little bit lighter. I'm going to see what the alcohol is here, and I don't know. But anyway. So this one has a distinct dark chocolate cake smell to it. It's got a really rich, deep, chocolatey, bready nose. I'm not getting any fruity esters, but I am getting a little bit of fruit. I think that's malt driven though. Almost like a dark dried fruit, like a raisin undertone. So maybe like a dark chocolate raisin cake. I don't know if that would be good, but it smells pretty nice. Again, I'm not getting any hops here, all malt, no yeast. You know, the Germans generally want the malt or the hops to be accented rather than the yeast, with the exception of wheat beers. Don't listen to that. I take all that back. With their lagers anyway. And it doesn't have that same roast edge to it here. So I'm getting that depth of malt without the roast. I'm liking that quite a bit. It smells like it might be a little bit sweet, but let's see. Okay. Yeah, that's nice. That goes down really easy. A little bit more full bodied than the Kostritzer was, but considerably lighter than the Sprecher's. It ends very smooth, just a slightest hint of roast bite on the end, but very, very mild. Easy drinking. It's got a somewhat full mouthfeel, again, in between these two. And but not enough to make it not drinkable. You know, sometimes when you have a big hefty beer with a lot of kind of chewiness to it, you can't really take big sips out of it, and that's not the case here. This goes down very easily. The depth of malt is wonderful here as well. The chocolate cake is still just sitting in my mouth with a little bit of that hop or roast bite to it. I think it might have a little hop actually. And it's nice. Just a really well balanced, very clean beer. No off flavors or you know, characteristics that I wouldn't want to see here. And it's nice. I think for a 6-pack for 10 bucks, this is certainly the best I've had so far. You know, I'm not saying this is a better beer than Kostritzer. I think a lot of this has to do with its proximity to where I'm trying to drink it, which is Chicago and you know, Utah. While not close, you know, it's easier to get it fresh here. So there you go. Uinta, I really like it. I'm going to give this guy a 92. I think it's a solid beer and one that I certainly will be reaching for next time I'm looking for a Schwarzbier. But who knows? I might reach for it and then decide to go with this next beer instead. This is Kid Black Lager from Fort Collins in Colorado. Fort Collins, just home to so many breweries. Just off the top of my head, I can think of obviously New Belgium, Odell, Fort Collins are all right in there, and I know for a fact that I'm skipping some. So Fort Collins, first time we've had these guys on the show as well, and you know, they're certainly the big boys out there, so you would think that they have to know what they're doing to be able to survive with the likes of New Belgium and Odell in their backyard. So this is the Kid Black Lager. Again, I don't have any bottling date data on this one. Trying to see if I can find something real quick. It's hard to see on some of these dark beers if there's anything printed on the bottle. Don't see anything, unfortunately. Yeah, not... Just looking for beer info as well, or ABV info as well. Okay, a lighter beer. I can already tell I've got more in my glass than I did with the Uinta, yet I can still see through it even more. You know, more like the Kostritzer, so not truly dark, but more of like kind of that ruby, russet colored beer. Nice tan head, just kind of a thin layer on there, and seems pretty thin. You know, somewhat full, not totally watery, but somewhat thin in the glass as well. So this also kind of reminds me of chocolate, baking chocolate, more kind of like a milk chocolate or like brownie batter, something like that is what I'm getting here. It doesn't have that same rich depth of flavor as the Uinta, but it's nice. I mean, hey, brownie batter smells pretty awesome. Again, absolutely no hop character to be detected, no fruitiness or anything as well, just kind of a deep roast, rich maltiness to it. And really, maybe like a hint of pepper in there as well. Interesting. So this one has the closest mouthfeel to the Kostritzer, that being it's the lightest. Fairly dry, well attenuated, no roast at all, but it's got kind of a weird minerality in the back end to it, and a weird kind of soapiness as well. You know, and it's a shame because it finishes so clean that all I'm getting is just a tiny little hint of that chocolate and then this weird kind of soapiness. Not a bad beer, just a little disappointing to have that as kind of the last thing you think of when you're drinking this beer. It's also just kind of a little thin overall. Relax, Max. Yeah, it's just not doing it for me, really. It's a little thin. It doesn't have the same depth as some of these other guys do. I mean, even the Sprecher, which wasn't necessarily the style, had a lot going for it. You know, I'm going to go 87 with this beer. That might be a touch harsh, but I just don't quite think I'm digging where it's going. It's the closest to the Kostritzer in some ways, but the Kostritzer, I think, is just much more refined and well put together. In fact, you know, I'm going to have a last little sip of the Kostritzer just so I can compare the two a little bit better. So, yeah, the Kostritzer doesn't have that same cake character. It's got more of a refined roast. Or refined maltiness, like I said, bread crust. It does have the age on it, which kind of sucks, but... yeah, maybe 87's a little tough. If I gave this, what I give this, 88 or something? I'll go 88 with this as well. It's about as good as the Kostritzer, but it's really not the Kostritzer's fault. It's the age and a little bit of oxidation going on with the Kostritzer, or some sort of abuse. But there you have it. I mean, in any regard, whether it's one notch higher, one notch lower, I definitely think these two are the way to go. You know, Max, come on, stop it. Damn dog. Thinks he's a tough guy, but he is the biggest wimp in the world. So for these two, I mean, really, if you want, to me, what I would consider to be a truer to style Schwarzbier, I would go with the Uinta Baba. If you want something a little bit bigger, a little bit bolder, without stepping necessarily into porter territory, keeping it kind of clean and malty, then definitely check out the Sprecher Black Bavarian. Both these beers are really, really nice. For me, I'm going to go out drinking the Uinta. Just a lovely beer on a warm day. And it looks kind of cool, you know, you're sitting out there, you're like, oh, people are saying, how can you drink that big, heavy beer? It's not. It's, you know, it's a nice, light Schwarzbier, wonderful on a day like this. And hey, sometimes you get used to, or get tired of those light malt flavors. You want something a little bit bigger without weighing you down. And the Schwarzbier is definitely the beer to turn to. If you guys are out at the store or at a bar and you see a black lager, you know, Schwarz Black, same thing. try it. Let me know what you think. I would really be interested to hear what you guys thought, especially if you haven't had one, because you're in for a surprise. That's about it for now, guys. Thank you, as always, so much for watching. I really appreciate everything, and as always, thanks for the comments. Keep them coming. I love to see what you guys think of the shows. Until next time, I've got some great beer to drink, and hopefully you do too.